for the invitation, Sander. I have to start by giving compliments to all of you for choosing to be here and not to be outside in the sun with this gorgeous weather. So my name is, by the way, I will do my best to outcompete the sun tonight and make sure that you won't regret this choice. So I'm Odo Velters. I'm a professor in sociology at the University of Amsterdam. I have been studying art markets for quite a while. I wrote my dissertation about it in the 1990s, in the late 1990s. That was on how contemporary art, how it gets priced. So why, some paintings are so expensive and others so cheap, which is also what I will be mostly focusing on tonight. And ever since, I have been doing all kinds of different types of research on the art market. I have been researching how art markets have been emerging in new economies in China, Brazil, Russia, and India. At the moment, I'm working on a project on private art museums. So the super rich of this world who are art collectors and who end up opening museums of their own. You may have heard about Museum Voorlinde in Wassenaar in the Netherlands. That is one good example of that. So all kinds of different research on the art market. But tonight I'm going to talk mostly about prices. So the question that I'm going to talk about, and I will be sharing my screen right now, is why some works are so incredibly expensive. And I'll do that in a very simple way. I will tell you 4 things that you need to know to understand prices for art, and especially the stock prices. So my goal is that by the end of this talk, or at least after the Q&A session, that you will understand why some works of art are so outrageously expensive. And I hope, I will try to keep it simple. 4 things that you need to know. There's much more that you could know, but with these 4 things, I hope that you remember it. And next time you are talking about that on a party or so, after a new work has been sold for a ridiculous price, you will be able to tell all about it. Okay, so the example that I'm going to take is just the most expensive work that has ever been sold. It's this painting, a portrait of Jesus, Salvator Mundi, Jesus who is going to save the world, which was sold in 2017 at Christie's, the auction house, for $400 million, plus $50 million as a commission for Christie's itself. So just by selling a single painting, Christie's earned $50 million, $450 million in total. Why would anybody pay such an amount for that? By the way, this is a painting that is, I don't think there is a single painting that has so many anecdotes attached to it, and I'll tell you a couple. The first anecdote has to do with its history. Basically, almost everybody in the art world, art historians, thought that this painting was lost since the early 17th century. But then in 2005, at a small auction house in New Orleans in the United States, some people spotted this painting and thought that might be the one. This might be a painting by, and there it is, Leonardo da Vinci, the painting, the single painting that got lost that he painted. And so these people, they got together, 5 of them in total. They bought the work for a cheap $10,000. They were, of course, not sure what it really was, so they were taking a risk. In the auction world, you call this a sleeper, so a painting that nobody is able to identify, but you are able to see what it really is. Then they asked a restorer to restore the painting for them, and they started asking all kinds of experts if it could really be a Leonardo da Vinci, and most of these experts actually said that it was. So it was eventually included in the major Leonardo da Vinci exhibition in London in, I think, 2011 or so. It was sold by Sotheby's, not at auction, but by Sotheby's just without an auction, to a Swiss art dealer for $75 million. So you can imagine that some people got immediately very rich, namely these 5 people who paid 10,000 for it and sold it for 75. Then the Swiss art dealer, he immediately sold it for $125 million to a Russian oligarch, Ribolovlev, a vodka tycoon, actually. Ribolovlev, at one point, he was sitting in his holiday vacation home in St. Barth, one of these luxury resorts and islands, and he was talking to some other rich guys. And one of those rich guys was saying that he had heard about a sale of some expensive paintings and that a dealer had bought this one for 75. Ribolovlev immediately knew that he had paid $50 million too much for it. So the dealer had bought it for 75, sold it for 125 to Ribolovlev, and Ribolovlev was furious. He actually filed a lawsuit against the Swiss art dealer that he felt cheated, that it was an unreasonable profit. And so the story goes on. Anyway, Ribolovlev, he doesn't win the lawsuit, but he decides at one point, and this is in 2017, to sell the painting at Christie's. Christie's has a marvelous, great marketing campaign. There is Leonardo DiCaprio, who you can see on a video, who is like admiring, actually as if he is having an orgasm. He is admiring this painting. So really a fabulous marketing campaign. And then at the auction, the price goes up and up. And at the end, there are 2 people bidding. And in the end, it seems to be the case that one of them is an oil sheikh from Saudi Arabia, and the other one is an oil sheikh from Abu Dhabi. And it's not completely clear if they both know that they are bidding against each other. But anyway, one of them wins it for $400 million. Since then, the painting has never been seen anymore. The rumors are that the painting, until recently, has been hanging in the yacht, the super yacht of the Saudi prince, of the crown prince, actually. Which, by the way, would be terrible because at a yacht on the sea with all the salt in the air, I mean, that can terribly damage this painting. And this is not a painting that was in a good state to begin with. Here you see the sheikh with his yacht where the painting so was hanging. And this is what the painting looked like when it was being restored. So it was not exactly in a good shape. This is what the painting looks like when they took off all the paint that has been added on later, after Leonardo painted it. Now there comes the second problem. Many experts are actually not that convinced anymore that Leonardo really painted it. The prince is in a dispute at the moment with the Louvre in Paris, who didn't want to exhibit the painting in a big exhibition that they organized on Leonardo da Vinci a couple of years ago. So this sheikh, he's buying a painting that is completely damaged, or at least if you would strip off the layers that have been added later on, and where people are not even convinced anymore that it is a real Leonardo da Vinci. So the question is, was that worth its value? And my question is, why? Why do people pay so much money for art? Now, I promise to you, I will give you 4 things that you need to know. And the first thing is a very banal thing that you need to know, but nevertheless, it is super important. The first thing that you need to know to understand these high prices for art, and I gave the Da Vinci as an example, but I could have given so many works which have been sold for more than 10, 50, or even more than $100 million over the last years. The first thing that you need to know is that there are simply many people in this world for whom paying $100 million actually doesn't mean that much. It is like you and I buying a new second-hand car. Well, that would be maybe more for me. It would be like you buying a new pair of shoes. There are at the moment, as you can see here in this graph, almost 2,800 billionaires in the world. Now, for a billionaire, paying $10 million for a work of art is 1% of her or his wealth. So that means that somebody who has a wealth of 100,000 euro, 1% would be 1,000. That is what it feels like for a billionaire. For a billionaire, $10 million has the same impact, feels the same way as 1,000 euro for somebody who has 100,000 euro in his bank account or in a house or you name it. It doesn't mean anything. For this oil shake, it means a couple of days of producing some extra oil. So this one very simple answer to understand to the question why people pay so much is that they are just so insanely rich that these amounts are, yeah, more or less meaningless. They will really not sleep less about it. That's the first thing. And just to say a little bit more about that, one interesting thing, if you want to see as many private jets lined up as you see here in one spot at one moment in time, you should go to one of the main art fairs in the world. Art fairs which take place and where all these rich people gather. For instance, in Maastricht in March, usually, I mean, it hasn't taken place this year because of COVID, but next year it will. And this is what you will see at the airport close to Maastricht. Or go to Basel, where one of the other main art fairs are taking place. All the rich people are going there. To just say one more thing about how little these amounts mean to the super rich, I give you the example of a Chinese art collector, Mr. Liu, who in 2014 bought a little cup that you can see here, a cup that is pretty old. It's more than 1,000 years old. It's called a chicken cup because there are some chickens depicted on it. So he bought that very precious piece of pottery for about $30 million. The first thing that he did then, after he had bought it, was to ask the people of the auction house to pour some tea in it. And then he immediately drank tea from it to just show off, how extremely wealthy he is. A couple of years later, he bought the painting that you see below here for $170 million, a Modigliani. And he paid for it, for both pieces actually, with his credit card, a black credit card of American Express, the most exclusive credit card that you can get. By paying for those pieces, he accumulated so many bonus points on his credit card that just from these transactions, he sent his wife and his daughter on a fully covered holiday, fully covered by the bonus points of American Express in New York, in a luxury hotel, including a first-class trip. This is the world of the people that are paying these amounts of money. Insanely rich. These figures don't mean much to them. Point one. But let's go to point two. The second point that you really need to understand about these high prices is that masterpieces, so pieces that everybody would like to have by world famous artists, that they are what I call terminal commodities. Now, what do I mean with that? A terminal commodity. A terminal commodity means that basically all these paintings are finally destined to end up in a museum. And that is their terminal destination. It is their terminal destination, which means that they will not come on the market again. Because museums don't sell their masterpieces. They hardly actually sell anything. They have their storage spaces chock full of art. That is just, I mean, some of it is accumulating dust there, but the masterpieces are, of course, they are up in the museum spaces to see. and no way they will sell it anymore. So that means that the number of masterpieces that people can buy, that they can put their hands on, is all the time diminishing. There is fewer and fewer masterpieces left. So every time that a single masterpiece comes on the market, all these rich people will immediately go nuts and will try to get it. So that is the second thing you need to understand. You have just a lot of money that is chasing on this small group of masterpieces that is getting smaller and smaller. Because also this Da Vinci painting, if it is a real Da Vinci, in the end, it will end up in a museum, all of them. Think back of a transaction that you may remember of about, what was it, 5 years ago, when the Rijksmuseum and the Louvre together bought these two beautiful portraits of Maarten Opien, which are now hanging half of the time in the Rijksmuseum. That's a good example. It was owned by a rich family in France, the Rothschild family, but it ended up in a museum. And the Rijksmuseum, no way they will get rid of it anymore. No private person will be able to buy it. You will never ever see it at auction anymore. So that's the second point to remember. Now, when I show this slide in lectures, I always get first some strange looks. Sometimes I start with this slide and then people are confused and they think, oh, maybe I went to the wrong place. Maybe I went to an anthropology lecture and not to a lecture on the art market. Well, I show you this image, and this is actually an image of a group of Indians, so native Indian Americans at the border of Canada and the United States at the moment, who have a ritual that is called the potlatch. And that potlatch ritual, and I will talk a little bit about it in a second, is, I think, another key to understand high prices for art. But the simple message is, and that is really important to remember, and we tend to forget, is that these rich people who buy art, that they are humans after all. They are humans just like you, just like me. They have all the simple things that makes us human, including, yeah, maybe a little bit childish things. They are looking for status. They want to be seen. They want to be recognized. They want to get the attention of people. And now, why do these American Indians, these Native Americans come in? Well, they come in because of that potlatch ritual. And the potlatch ritual is a very strange ritual in which groups of Native Americans used, and they still do it a little bit, but especially in the past, they would on a regular basis, so maybe once per year or twice per year, they would get together, and what they would basically do is that they would give away their wealth. So the expensive things that they owned, they would simply give them away to the other group. And that's, I mean, that sounds pretty irrational to do, right? I mean, why would you give away your most expensive belongings? And the others would just take them. Sometimes they wouldn't even physically interact. They would leave it at an open space in the forest. And on the one side, there would be what one group would leave, and on the other side, the other stuff. Why would you do that? Why would you just give away your most expensive stuff? Well, because as part of that ritual, the group that is leaving the most expensive stuff is getting also the most status. They get the most prestige. And in a way, this is exactly what these rich people are doing as well. By just spending, let's call it burning, $100 million, $400 million, they are basically showing off. They show how extremely wealthy they are. And by spending it on something that is not, that doesn't have any real functional utilitarian value, they are getting status. So partially these people are involved in a status game. And that is sometimes, I mean, it's a pretty direct status game. I give you the example of this dog, the balloon dog. It's a balloon dog. It's a sculpture, a big sculpture, a couple of meters high, made out of aluminium by an American artist, Jeff Koons. And Jeff Koons made about 5 or 6 or so of these balloon dogs, all in different colors. One of them is owned by one of the most important hedge fund managers, Stephen Cohen, who you see here. He's also the owner of the Mets, the baseball team. He has this balloon dog standing on his apartment in New York. Another one is owned by this guy, Pinol, a big luxury goods tycoon. He has it in his private museum in Venice. Then there is this guy, Eli Broad, a big real estate manager. He has, if you look well on the background, he has a blue one. These people, they are exactly the people who are meeting each other at these auctions or at these art fairs. And they're talking to each other. They are comparing what they own. And if they manage to put their hand on such a balloon dog, they're part of the group. They're one of the real guys. So that is really important for them. They all the time look at each other and look at what the other ones are buying and what they're owning. Here there is a red one, a balloon dog, owned by a Greek shipping tycoon. And so again, these people, they really are part of the same network. I show you here an image of all the things, the kind of festivals, meeting places, art fairs, Davos, the World Economic Forum that is taking place in January every year, the auctions, film festivals, Saint-Tropez, luxury resorts. That is where these people meet each other and hang out. And that is where it is important to show that you have the right art. By the way, by having the right art, it also gives them access to really prestigious positions in, for instance, museums, in the boards of museums. You see a very nice graph here of what it takes to become a board member, so to become like really part of the governance of a museum in New York. For instance, if you want to be a board member of the Metropolitan Museum in New York, you have to spend $10 million worth of just a donation to the museum. But you also need to have a good art collection because you need to show that you have the right eye for art. So that is another reason, just because of status, why they are willing to pay that much. So that they can hang out with their friends. Here on this picture, you see Roman Abramovich. By the way, you may also know, especially since this weekend, that he's also owner of Chelsea, of the football club who won the Champions League this weekend. He has a private museum in Russia. This guy here on the right also has a private museum in Russia, and they are hanging out together. Or I'll give you an example of one guy who I interviewed for one of my research projects, Yang Bing, a super rich car dealer in Beijing, who was taking me to his art collection, a super important art collection. And so I was really at the place where he is sitting now, and he asked me to sit down, and there was like expensive wine on the little white table that you see here on this side. And like he was offering cigars, and then he was taking a remote control. This is as close as I have to it at the moment. So he was taking a remote control and starting to push all kinds of buttons. And then all of a sudden, in front of us, there was a conveyor belt. And on that conveyor belt were all his nice paintings. And just one after the other was rolling in front of our eyes. And that is what he would do with his friends. He would invite them, just like he invited me, and show off his collection. Why? Well, simply put, because Yan Bing and all the other collectors who I showed, they are humans after all. They are maybe even more human in the sense that they are really craving for status and recognition. and for attention. So that's the third point. By the way, sometimes that means that they also engage in very ferocious, aggressive competitions. I already showed this guy on the bottom, Pinot, who is a French luxury tycoon. But there is another one in France, Arnold, who you see on top, and he's also a luxury tycoon. And those two guys are all the time competing over who has the best art collection. By the way, when the Notre Dame burned down a couple of years ago, Arnold was, I think, the day after the Notre Dame burned down, he was offering to I think, pay 100 million for the restoration. And just a couple of hours later, Pinot was immediately announcing in a press release that he would be offering even more to help the restoration of the Notre Dame. That is the status competitions that I'm thinking about, which drive up these prices for art. Okay, final point. The final point is, and that is maybe the most important point, and I liked that Sander, when he was introducing the evening, that he was using the word magic, because to some extent, the art world really is about magic. It is about belief. The value of an artwork is in the end something that you need to believe in. And that belief, it just doesn't come about like that. It needs to be created. It needs to be produced. Just like with religion, you need to become a believer. It's not just a matter of you believe or not. I'll show you one kind of experiment here that demonstrates that belief nicely and what happens if there is no belief. This is what you see here is an old guy who is selling some pictures for very little money. You see a price tag here of $60 for these little black and white paintings, and he was selling those just at the edge of the Central Park in New York. The old guy was not very successful. It's 1 o'clock. He hasn't sold anything yet. Hours later, he still hadn't sold anything. I want you to pay attention to this painting that the red arrow is pointing at, of a beer, because that was the only single painting that he managed to sell after an entire day. Or I think there was one other one, and both of them were bought by the same person who just he liked it. I mean, he was looking for something to decorate the room of his son with. He was a little bit puzzled why he had to leave an email address with this old guy, but he did that. So for $100, a bit of a discount, he got those two paintings. Now, afterwards, he got an email from an artist who you probably know named Banksy. This person and the old guy was actually selling all paintings by Banksy. Banksy had created them. This was part of an experiment of Banksy. Without knowing that these are Banksy pictures, nobody took an interest because there was no belief in the value of it. Nobody associated it with Banksy. But hey, what happened next? Once the guy who had bought these two for $100 knew that it was a Banksy, because Banksy told him so himself, he finally ended up selling the works at auction. And he got, can I see it? He got 63,000 euro for it. Why? Well, because we all know and think of Banksy as this great important artist, because there is this whole circle of belief around Banksy. And that is what the art world is about. The art world, in the end, is one big belief-making machine. What do I mean with that? Well, it means, and I'm really borrowing from a French sociologist, Pierre Bourdieu, probably one of the most important sociologists of the 20th century, who has very nicely shown that museums and art critics and curators and all kinds of exhibitions that are being organized, That is all where this belief gets formed. All the people that are telling you how important a piece is, everything you read in the newspapers or online, or the Instagram followers, the Instagram influencers these days, who are telling you what is great art and what isn't. Essentially, they are all creating belief. And without that belief, art really wouldn't have value. It also wouldn't have economic value, because it is exactly because of that belief that people are willing to pay so much money for it. And this holds, of course, especially for masterpieces, because there it is a form of belief that is not going to go away anymore. It is a belief that will stick, that can almost be sure that we believe in the value of a Rembrandt or a Da Vinci or a Van Gogh now, but in 50 years from now, people will still believe that. By the way, that is not always the case. For a contemporary artist, the chances are actually quite big that you may believe in its value now, but in 20 years from now, everybody has forgotten about the artist and nobody believes anymore in its value. So, to summarize that, it is because for these masterpieces, that belief is almost solidified. It is so strong and so permanent that it is worthwhile to pay so much money for it. Um, I will skip these parts and just come to a conclusion. These four things, the number of billionaires in the world, the fact that so few paintings, masterpieces are still around because they all end up in museums, the insight that art buyers and also super rich art buyers are just humans after all, looking for status and recognition. And finally, the idea that the value of art is in the end a matter of belief. That is what you need to know to understand prices and value for art. And that is where I will stop.
All right. Well, thank you very much for this very clear picture about these high prices. Um, and I think that I actually want to start with also one of the examples I gave in the promo picture, and that was about NFTs, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I didn't see
so can you,
promo
can you
picture, but
maybe explain like what an NFT is and why these are also like that expensive?
yeah, yeah. So I actually think. So let me first tell a little bit about what an NFT is. So an NFT is a non-fungible token. It is basically it can be any cultural product. It can be a piece of art, digitally created. It can be a song, a music song. It can be a tweet, a Twitter tweet. It can be just a picture of a nice little kitten. It can be a piece of text. It can be anything. And what you do with it is in a digital transformation, you turn it in an NFT. And it means that basically in the technology that that Bitcoin, among others, is using, namely, I'm blanking on the word. At 1 second, who knows the word I'm looking for? The technology underlying Bitcoin. Yeah, Ethereum would be another one, another currency, but the blockchain I was thinking of. So blockchain, the technology that Bitcoin, Ethereum is using, you register basically there that you are the only unique owner of that piece, which is quite irrational, to be honest, because that might be registered digitally, but at the same time, that that work of art, that cultural product, is still available for everybody, because everybody, it is a digital piece of art, so everybody can copy it. So officially, I may be the only owner of an NFT. I may be owning the unique piece, but at the same time, anybody can enjoy it. Anybody can see it. Anybody can listen to it. Anybody can still read that tweet. And as you may have read in the last months in the newspapers or online, some people have been willing to pay insane amounts for NFTs. So a digital art piece has been sold for $65 million, or the first tweet that was ever sent was sold for $2 million, or a cute digital image of a kitten was sold for $500,000. Why do people do that? Well, again, status is definitely one thing. It is, if you are that person, and I'm thinking back now again of my Native Americans who, by just destroying their wealth, were actually acquiring status. That is what these people in the Bitcoin scene are doing as well. So that is one thing. The second thing, some people in these Bitcoin and Ethereum circles, they did get incredibly rich in the last year or so because the rate of Bitcoin and Ethereum has been skyrocketing. So they just had the money to spend. Another reason is that they may be thinking of it actually, and that is something that I didn't talk about, but I would be very happy to talk about, is that they do it for speculation. They may be hoping that somebody else will even be willing to pay more money for it. So they buy it more as an investment. So those are some of the main reasons why people are willing to pay so much money for NFTs. To be honest, I think it is a temporary phenomenon. It is typical, and you see that quite often, that when a new market emerges, it's very volatile, it's very unstable. People don't really know yet how much is a decent value. And actually, for NFTs, we have seen over the last weeks that prices have gone down again very much. Yeah, I could talk much longer about that. So there are really interesting aspects about these NFTs. But who knows? I mean, I also I would be curious to hear from you, Sander, but from all of you, what you are interested in, what you want to hear more about.
I have a question if I can.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
When you buy an NFT, do you actually receive like the high quality JPEG or original digital format as well, or and when you sell your NFT, do you have to give it away again? Because of course it is a digital copy. So how do they keep track of that? Or
Yeah,
do you just own the concept of the digital thing? How do they register the digital ownership?
yeah. So the registration, that is the simpler part. It is in this blockchain. It really gets coded into the digital technology underlying it. But I like your question, and to be honest, I don't know exactly, and I think it differs per piece. So I would assume that for low quality pieces like those funny kittens, it doesn't really matter that much because the resolution is very low. But for instance, this $65 million work that I mentioned before, so you can find it online, actually on the website of the auction house, Christie's. But if you zoom in there, even if you zoom in as much as you can, then the picture is pretty blurred. So the image quality is not super high. I would imagine that the person that bought it, that he got a better version of it. So the short answer, I mean, there's two answers. The honest answer is I don't exactly know, but I expect that it differs per piece. That the higher the resolution, so the bigger the size of the image, the image size would be. It is probably not likely that you will have access to the same one as the owner of it. But for low resolution works, I would think it is exactly the same piece. I mean, think of the Twitter message. Yeah, there is nothing unique about it. So in that sense, I mean, it's quite fascinating, no, that people are really willing to pay that much money for it.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Does someone else already have a question? Maybe about NFTs or like something different? Michel, pronouncing it correctly?
Hi, yeah, Michelle, that's right. Hi, thank you for this. It's very interesting. Now, I was very curious about you said that, for example, contemporary art has higher chances of, let's say, decaying in time because it's like a picture of a specific moment and it's not like delivering a whole like big. I'm not sure how to express it, but I guess yeah. What would you like? How would you? Because now I was just thinking while you said that I thought that's interesting, and I thought, but why would that be the case? Like because I imagine, for example, that a contemporary art piece today, let's say, I don't know, now there is a lot of populism, and we talk a lot about many things, and these topics are kind of giving a shape to today. So like a contemporary artist would create something that really is like a picture, like let's say a metaphor or something really like a bridge between you and the concept and just something visible that is like a testifying something that is more abstract. And wouldn't that be something that keeps its value for that reason? Like it's specifically something that can testify like a specific moment or thought, way of thinking of a moment in history?
That's a really good question. Should I say Michelle, Michael? The first?
Sorry, I muted. Yeah, Michelle. Yeah.
No, that's a really good question. I really like that question. So look, but I can only answer it in a very complicated way. So let me first talk about maybe the least important thing, and that is the economic value. It will most likely lose its economic value. Basically, any piece of new art that you buy, whether it is in a gallery or online or at an affordable art fair, or if you would ever buy something where else, yeah, from an artist directly, the chances are really, really high that it doesn't only lose its economic value, it loses all of its economic value. Why? Because there is no market for it anymore. There's nobody who wants to buy it from you. If you would go to an auction house and ask if they want to sell it for you, they would say, yeah, go away, you're nuts, and we're not going to do that. So there's only a very small category of art where it is possible to keep selling it, to buy and sell all the time. And for new pieces, and this is something that people are not aware of, and that, by the way, galleries and artists, I don't think they are very honest about it. They usually don't tell people, but it is like that. It is like buying a new car, but then worse. Look, if you buy a new car, the moment you drive it out of the showroom, it has lost 20% of its value, just like that. You drove one kilometer with it. With art, it's like that, but then worse. You cannot even sell it anymore, unless you would be extremely lucky and it happens to be an artist who, in the future, gets, well, let's call it consecrated, where this belief is really produced in a stable way. So and most of the artists, they are just forgotten. Maybe you can buy it for 50 euro or so on Marktplaats or eBay, something like that. That's it. But your question is a much more important one, and that is not about the economic value, but much more about its cultural value. For instance, as a reflection of a zeitgeist of an era. Does it lose that value as well? Well, it depends on how good it conveys that, and how many other pieces have been created that convey that as well. And then it is again a type of competition. If let's say in the last year there have been all over the world more than 1,000 artists who have been trying to convey this era, this moment of COVID. So the desperation and loneliness and all the depression and all the negative, but maybe also positive things. But I'm thinking mostly about the negative things that COVID unfortunately brought to many of us. Let's say it were 1,000 artists, and they all painted or created 10 paintings. Then you have 10,000 pictures. Do you need 10,000 to keep remembering that experience? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe we need much less. Maybe we need much more. But that is what I'm thinking about when I would be answering your question. Yes, art is a reflection of its time, but how many pieces do you need to reflect that, and how many pieces will end up of those in a museum, for instance, so that really remain visible? That is the real issue.
Yeah, I mean that's indeed like a very fascinating thing to think about, when that within the international art market you need to basically divide between the masterpieces and the other art that is contemporary. Let's see, Maya, do you still have your question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. It's a bit of another aspect of the whole art world almost. And I think that it's quite hard to get into, and I was wondering if there are like ways to make it more accessible, and if that's maybe favorable or not. I was wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah. It's a really good question, Maya, and something that I find very important myself. I agree with you that the art world, well, that big parts of the art world are very elitist, and it is both elitist in the economic sense, because to buy art, you need to be relatively wealthy, but also in a cultural sense, it's a cultural elite who think of themselves as more, sophisticated when it comes to taste than many others. And the art world has very long, I mean, the history of the art world is a history of elites. Does it mean that it is only elitist? No, I don't think so. I mean, there are parts of the art world that are less elitist and much more open and democratic. And I do think the art world is in a slow process of democratization. Now, some examples of that would be, for instance, if you think of affordable art fairs, it's these art fairs that are taking place also in the Netherlands annually, where the threshold and the price level, by the way, is not so high. So you can buy art for, I don't know, 100 euro or maybe a couple of €100, not that super expensive. So there you see that it is opening up. But you also see that it is opening up through social media. I mean, the art world has very long resisted social media, actually much longer than, for instance, the music industry or the movie industry. I mean, those have all been completely changed through Netflix and Spotify and all the platforms. But until recently, the art world didn't have a platform like that. But now at least Instagram is finally having an impact on the art world as well. And of course, Instagram is much more democratic than a gallery would be, because anybody can be on Instagram and asking questions and look at pictures without feeling, oh, I have to know to say things in the right way, and I have to be dressed in a smart way, and so social media are doing a bit of that democratization. But by the way, COVID has strangely enough also had a democratizing impact, because of COVID, all of a sudden people couldn't meet physically anymore. So you didn't have those physical auctions and art fairs, but people had to deal with each other online. And so they created these online viewing rooms, and they are open to everybody. So also there, because of digitization stimulated by COVID, it was the only way to sell art in the last year. That made it easier for newcomers to the art scene to just in a more relaxed way look at art online from the safety of their home. So in that sense, there are all kinds of democratization processes going on. And by the way, and this is the final thing I will say about it, um, I'm saying the art world or the art market, but actually you should think of many different art worlds and art markets that are partially a bit related to each other, but also very different. So if you go to just a small local gallery, maybe in Utrecht, it is much less elitist, of course, than if you go to one of these super dealers in New York. And in that sense, it is very, there's a lot of variation there.
I like also the comment of Anouk, like tussen kunst en quarantaine.
Yeah.
Shout out. All right. Does someone else have a question for Olaf?
Yeah, Mayo.
Yes, thank you very much. I wanted to ask a question about something you said earlier about how buying art is not really a big deal for these billionaires, especially art at this price point. It could be only 1% of their income, so it's not really a big deal. But also, it is a status symbol for most of these rich people to possess this kind of art. And I wanted to ask, do you think that is truly all it is for these rich people? Because you saw the rich sheikh put this art piece on his boat, so I suppose he kind of liked it to put it on his boat, also for a status symbol. But you also saw these big storage places with art that would never be displayed, so maybe the intention was to resell the art. So what is the biggest intention behind buying all this expensive art actually the status symbol, or are there other motives for these rich people to be buying and selling because it's only such a small part of their income?
Yeah, that's again, it's a really good question. It's pretty hard to generalize about it. I want to emphasize that I'm not cynical about it. I really don't think it is only about status, and I definitely also don't think that it is only about investment. Yes, it is true. Some rich people buy for investment reasons and also for as a status symbol. And sometimes when I have been interviewing, especially in the new emerging regions, I was sometimes really flabbergasted how little they knew about the art. It would sometimes really stop at the name of the artist, but when I would be asking them to talk about the work, so to tell why they like it so much, they would just stumble. They wouldn't have much to say. So that was sometimes a little bit depressing actually. But what I've also seen is people who start like that, and maybe for status, and maybe because their friends said, "Oh, come with us to the fair, and we can hang out and drink champagne, and it's nice." But then they end up really liking it and loving it and developing a passion for it. And so, for instance, when I'm thinking about these super rich people who founded their own private museums, you're not doing that only for status. Having a private museum is so extremely expensive. Most of these people who do that, they have to put a lot of money into running that museum from their own, just their own wealth. You only do that when you really care about it, when you care about the art, about the artists. So there is a lot of variation, and the nicest things that can happen is again when somebody in the process, just gets intrigued and really gets passionate about it. Does it happen to everybody? I don't think so. Is the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, is he one of those people? I honestly don't think so. I really don't think he has a very deep understanding of this type of art. Maybe he has it of other types of art, but it may come, and that is what is nice about it. Hey, and by the way, for all of you, I mean, I really don't believe in stupid questions. And this is your chance to ask any question you may have about anything related to art worlds and art markets. So really feel free to ask. And when I give lectures to my own students, I always say, and I mean it, the most stupid question, when you think it is a really stupid question, usually those are the best questions.
All right, I got a question.
Yeah.
I was wondering, let's just say I'm gonna draw a drawing right now. What do I have to do, or what do I have to accomplish to sell that piece of art for $100 million? What process do you need to get it that much worth?
Yeah, good question, Martin. First of all, you'd better go to an art academy first. Yeah, no, but seriously, but I'm what I mean is that you may be drawing the exact same drawing there as you do now, but just because you went to the art academy already produces a little bit of that belief. And then you go to a post art academy. So it's a kind of a follow-up art academy. And in the Netherlands, you'd better go to the Rijksacademy. It's a prestigious academy here in Amsterdam who only accept, I think, 30 artists per year out of, I think, 2,000 applications. So there is a sense of, exclusivity. So you go to that Rijksacademy. Then at the end of the Rijksacademy, you'd better become very good friends both with important art dealers and with important art collectors. That is going to be important as well. Because those art dealers, they already have prestige. So people believe in the art dealer. Now, belief in this system, it rubs off on other people. If this is the art dealer with a lot of prestige, and this is you without any prestige, if you manage to get the art dealer interested in the drawing that you just made, then his prestige will kind of rub off on you, and you will get prestige as well. So you are going to rise in the art world. And then afterwards, there may be an even more prestigious art dealer that becomes interested. And that is how even more belief, and like that, there will be a process of that more and more people and more important people will start believing in that exact same drawing that you made. I mean, your skills maybe didn't improve that much. Maybe your skills in networking, they did improve, and your skills in talking about art in a sophisticated way, which, by the way, would not be in a commercial way. You should never say that you are interested in money, that you want to make that 100 million. When you do that, you're out immediately. Part of that belief is that you really try to convey to people that you're so passionate about that piece of art that you just created, and try to convince others that they believe in it as well. So that process continues for a very long time, and if in the end the most powerful people in the art world, the most powerful art dealers, collectors, museum directors, if they all believe in that, it will, well, maybe not be 100 million, but maybe 10.
All right, thank you. Better get working there.
Who else? Clara, did you want to ask something?
Yeah, it's a question actually related to what Martin just asked. So Jeff Koons is a contemporary artist, famous for the balloon dogs, and I think we can fairly say that in 20 years, well, his art will keep on being so pricey. So how did he do? He was just very good at networking?
That did help. I mean, by the way, Jeff Koons started as a stockbroker. Before he became an artist in the early 1980s, he was working on the stock market. I don't think that helped, but he went through a trajectory like that a little bit. By the way, what is important with Jeff Koons is that the first pieces that he made were pieces that now are actually not his most expensive pieces, but in art historical terms, those are the ones that are seen as really important. And those are pieces, it would be like an aquarium, and there would be a couple of basketballs floating in the aquarium. Or it would be a lineup of 3 vacuum cleaners in a glass display. So very conceptual works of art. And somehow art historians really liked those pieces. So he managed to make people who really matter, whose opinions really matter, pay attention to his work. And then indeed it did go through this, I would say, through this widening circles of belief, and that is how, I mean, in a nutshell, how we ended up there. I wouldn't be 100% sure, by the way, that if in 20 or 50 years it will still be that pricey. Jeff Koons would be an artist. So if you compare the art historical recognition that he got with the price level, then the balance is a little bit very, very expensive. And art historical recognition, it exists, but not maybe exactly proportionate to the price level. So unless something is going to happen with that even more art historical recognition, it might be that, after a couple of decades, we start wondering. I mean, don't forget that, for instance, if you think back of the times of Impressionism and Post-Impressionism, that the artists who were really expensive in the days of Impressionism and Post-Impressionism have been completely forgotten. We don't know them anymore. So the works that back then people were willing to pay top prices for, we don't know them. And vice versa, the Impressionists, nobody was willing to pay money for those. But now we pay, incredible amounts for it. So in the long run, it could be, but let's see.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Who else?
Anouk, did you want to ask something?
Yeah, I was wondering if your research on all of the art has inspired you to buy art for your own house. Maybe not in the same price range as we just spoke about, but nevertheless.
Yeah, good question, Anouk. Yeah, I actually I did. People are still making fun of me for it because I like let's say it's quite minimalist types of things, and they are. So when I was doing my research, I was actually not having that much money yet. I was doing interviews with galleries also in the Netherlands, and sometimes I would see things that I would really, really like, and then I would come back later on and I would still like. They would be very expensive. I was a PhD student, so I was really not earning that much. And I remember one of the first pieces that I bought cost 5,000 guilder, so that would be 2,000 or 3,000 euros. So it was a lot of money for me. It really hurt. And I kind of like that also. I didn't like that it hurt back then, but that also is related to value. I think that if you really have to make a sacrifice for it, I mean, it was not like that I couldn't eat anymore, but it meant that I couldn't buy other things for a while. So if you really have to sacrifice something for it, that is also, it's a way of expressing value, and also for the artist that somebody, that's not nothing. I mean, just like look, this sounds maybe very cheesy, but just the fact that you are kind of making the sacrifice of being in such a Zoom meeting and not being outside in the sun, it means something to me. You are, in that sense, contributing something through time. But on the art market, you do it through money. And yeah, that sacrifice for artists, it can really mean something. People are still making fun because the art is still hanging in my living room, and it's so minimalistic that yeah, they will ask, but why did you pay all that money for it? So I mean, I can tell them. I don't think many people would agree with me that it is worth it. But so back then I did buy a lot. Now I have children and a much more hectic schedule. And buying art also costs a lot of time. I mean, you have to have the time to go to places, to go to exhibitions. So I have not been buying much recently anymore. Strangely enough, because yeah, in the meantime, as a professor, my income is much better, of course, than as a student. But my time is much less. So that yeah. How about you, Anouk? Did you ever buy something?
I did once. When I went to a second-hand store, there was a painting of a tree that I found very beautiful. But I went there by bike, so it was difficult for me. I was like, well, maybe I was like, I can come back later. So I did come back, or I said I took a picture and I sent an email a week later, but it had already been sold, so I couldn't come back again. So sadly enough, no. But I've learned from that, so I will buy it next time if I'm grasped by a painting.
You should. Good.
Yeah.
Did I see that Michel had like his hand up?
Yeah. Hi. Yeah, I was wondering because before there was a question about from Maya, I think, about the democratization of art, like like there is elite and okay, like a lot of money and stuff, and then there is like this like the lower kind of income landscape and things. And I was thinking, would it be reasonable to say that in that scenario, like the best place to create you said the belief, right? Would it be safe to say, not safe, but generally speaking, would it be safe to say that that place is social media for the less, let's say, yeah, income, like people like us, let's say?
Yeah. Yeah, well, yes and no. Look, the thing is, and that is, and maybe one last thing that I didn't talk about, but which I do think is really crucial to understand what is going on in that world, but I think in many worlds around us at the moment, is that the art market and the art world, it is a winner-take-all market. And so that means that there is a very small group of artists who are doing very well, and it may be in terms of money, it may be in terms of attention, but it may also be, for instance, on Instagram, in terms of number of followers, number of likes. Banksy has over 1 million followers. But how do you?
People guy,
Yeah, people will have maybe even more. So people, for those who don't know, is the artist who created that piece that was sold for 65 million the first 5,000 days. That is how the artwork was called. So there is a small group who also on Instagram is doing very well. But if you want to start as an artist on Instagram, how do you get followers? How do you convince people to follow you? It is not that easy. And that is of course how the whole digital economy is working. It's the same on Spotify. A very small group of artists are getting all the songs listened to, and a huge group of artists hardly ever comes on the radar. So these are, in that sense, it's almost like inequality is baked into the system. And potentially, yes, Instagram is open to everybody. Even Martin can post his drawing on Instagram tonight, and maybe we will follow him. but who else will? That is the issue. That is what is making it difficult, and that is, it's almost like a fundamental law that is pretty difficult to break, and you really see it on in the whole platform economy at the moment, not just in the arts, but in all kinds of cultural scenes as well.
Thanks.
Isn't it time to stop, Sander? I think, I mean, in usual lectures, it's I just feel Zoom fatigue creeping into my head. I would imagine that you will have the same. So after 1 hour and 20 minutes, I always get this brain that is starting to fry slowly a little bit. If there are any final questions, I'm more than happy. But otherwise.
Yeah, I was also thinking that maybe there might have been a last question. I actually prepared one myself, which was, should I, as a person, invest in art or in Bitcoin? But I kind of think that you already made clear that if I would invest in art, it needs to be like a Van Gogh or another masterpiece, because otherwise,
that is true. So from econometric evidence, so really big data sets, they show that art overall is not a very good investment. If you want to invest, it's better to buy stocks and bonds. I would not invest in Bitcoin either. To be honest, I honestly don't understand the logic of it, and to me, it strikes me as so speculative. And I think the reason why Bitcoin has been going up, well, it has been going down recently, and NFTs have been going up. It's just because there is so much money floating around at the moment because of the low interest rates. So there is bubbles for all kinds of things. But investing in art, no. If you want to buy art, I would always buy something that you really like, that you fall in love with, that you want to look at for a long time. Otherwise, the chances are big that you're just going to lose a lot of money.
Well, I think that's like a good hint, or like a good tip for everyone to think about, and to end the lecture with. Well, thank you very much, Olaf, for having these very nice answers to all of our questions. I think that most of the people here will, as you wish, leave with a lot of broader knowledge about the international art market, and can even try to explain this magical world at borrels or at drinks. So for all the people that are still here, a link will be sent in the chat to a poll. And this poll is meant for like the Speaker of the Year awards, which we will give at the end of the year. So do you think that the lecture by Olaf is a very good one? Please let us know via this poll. Thank you for that in advance. Later tonight, there also will be drinks for the SIB members in our Discord channel. So hopefully I will see a lot of you back there. And then I also want to already make some promotion for the lecture of next week, which will be done by my lovely colleague, Meine. And this one will be about the end of poverty, the first Sustainable Development Goal. How far are we actually with that? And for the rest, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your attention, and hopefully see you next time. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.